Here is talking about churches, back to the cultural attacks. That's kind of the theme in today's episode, eh? Cultural attacks abound. Am I wrong, says Aaron Werdick, or have more people been arrested in Canada this year for going inside a church to worship than for burning one down? Yeah, you see video of cops showing up at pastors' homes. You don't see video of parents being distraught over their child being arrested for taking down a statue of Queen Elizabeth, right? And they should be held accountable for their vandalism and their destruction. They should be, right? That's against the law in Canada. Here is Ezra Levent. He said, Trudeau's CBC is whipping up the church arsons. They're radicalizing their viewers, giving moral cover to domestic violent extremists in Antifa and the radical left, many of whom receive grants from Trudeau. Yeah, CBC says the Catholic Church in Canada has raised $300 million for church buildings since 2005, documents show. That's the year the church promised to make best efforts to raise $25 million for residential school survivors. Since then, less than $4 million has been raised. So yeah, that's not reconciliation. That's not helping things, right? That's fanning the flames of hate and division. And that's the CBC's job, it seems. And if you don't know that, well, you're behind on this culture war. Here is Mike Slipinski. He says, I highlighted this yesterday on Speaking Moistly. Greg and I chatted about the church burnings and the culture war and it's Chris Sky. And I'm not going to talk about Chris Sky. But he says, he's responding to, can someone please tell me why a lawyer inciting to burn down churches is still on Twitter and still has a job as a lawyer? And Slipinski says, beats me, I guess inciting people to burn down churches is not a violation of Twitter's terms of service. Yeah, it seems like from big tech to small town news, they're all A-okay with burning churches. But if you say anything like, housing's really expensive, and doesn't immigration play into housing prices? It's like, you can't say that. Oh, you're blaming immigrants. No, I'm blaming bad policy. It has nothing to do with the immigrants. The immigrants are taking advantage of the bad policy, but they're getting here and realizing that living here is really expensive, and they don't have the money. So, they don't have the money because there's a lot of help, but the opportunities that are promised aren't here, right? And so, like, when you try and have a real conversation, you get derailed by the same cultural attack. The same thing, right? You're racist, you're intolerant, you're this, you're that. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with bad policies. They're just being distractionary. They're misdirecting. It's like a magician. Look over here while I'm doing something like over here, right? Matt Walsh says, if there were schools teaching that black people are inherently racist and must apologize for the sins of their ancestors, nobody in the country would object to such curriculum being banned. Nobody. Not David French, not anybody, but reverse the races. And now it's free speech. If you teach that white people are inherently racist and must apologize for the sins of their ancestors, everybody agrees. Everybody says that this is free speech and should be continued. In fact, it should be taught to children. And it is being taught to children. Taught to children in Canada. I've done a 7-part series about it. Taught to children in Illinois. This guy says his daughter was taken aside and said, you're a minority, you should know better. I'll find that part. Hold on. Sorry if this is a little quiet. I hope it's not too quiet, but he's not really speaking into the mic. He's speaking kind of over top of the mic. It would have been a lot better if you brought that mic up more. Anyway, doesn't matter. Here we go.
Critical race theory is teaching that white people are bad. That's not true. That would teach my daughter that her mother is evil. You already have an educator within your staff that has pulled my daughter aside and said, well, you're a minority, so you know better than to engage in certain things.
Wow.
Whoa.
When I was brought to the school's attention, nothing happened to the educator. Instead, my daughter was brought in, and she was ridiculed. So my question is now, with critical race theory being brought in, what is your criteria to educate the educators?
So, unfortunately, and I've trod this road a few times, when you start asking for criteria, now we've got you. Now we're in a negotiation, right? You just have to say, stop the bullshit. Stop it. Don't you dare teach my children this hate. Don't you dare. You don't say, what are your criteria? You don't say, under what parameters? Because then they say, oh, you're so racist. Screw your parameters. Shove it down your throat, right? Don't you dare teach my children this hate. Don't you dare. That's what you do. You don't go in there and say, I'm going to play your game, because the game is, you're racist and we're in charge. That's what the game is. But that's not true. That's not true. Those people, the Board of Education, all the way up to the Premier and the federal government, they work for us. They don't dictate to us. They work for us. So don't make the mistake I've made, because I went in and played their game. And I asked questions that I knew they couldn't answer, because the answer to those questions is uncomfortable for them, because their agenda is uncomfortable, because it's racist. So when you ask the questions that make them uncomfortable, you get labeled aggressive and hostile. Just go in there and say, and understand what battle you're in. Go in there armed and aware. Go in there with a group of parents, a whole big group of parents who will not take it anymore, right? Just like you've seen in a whole bunch of school boards across the US. We haven't seen that in Canada. But in order to deal with this, you can't play their game. It's the same as the COVID game. You can't play. The second you start playing the COVID game, oh, well, the numbers are up again. The numbers are up again. We got to shut things down. Oh, my goodness gracious me. This is how they're indoctrinating kids. Okay, and this is what indoctrinated kids look like. Just to finish this off for the day, this is a cultural attack, nothing more. Okay, this is a minute long, and it is scary as all heck. Here we go.
ESI Creates has been an amazing opportunity for our school to have time dedicated to come together to talk about how do we create anti-racist schools.
I see teaching as a very political act. When we are engaging with our students, whether it's on social justice issues or multicultural issues or culturally relevant teaching, I see that as foundational to all learning.
We are learning a lot about like different issues in this world and like what's happening around. Like we're mostly thinking about like racial and culture in my class and how we could change the future.
We have all of these different people that are activists. We have gay people, we have transgender people, and we have people that are taking action. And we're learning how to take action in social studies now.
We've seen our students.
I've talked about this before. They're no longer teaching kids to work on themselves, and if somebody's saying something, be nice to them, but you've got responsibility for yourself. They're being taught to take action. They're being taught to be advocates. They're being taught to be evangelical to a point, right, of this new religion, and this is not appropriate. This is not this example is not Canadian, but if you go to Canada Report and go to the Upper Grand District School Board series, you'll see the Canadian version of this, and it's just as scary, just as insidious. They are indoctrinating our children in order to teach them that their skin color is bad, their history is bad. The federal government is doing this. The provincial government is doing this. Cities are doing this. They're using COVID to push further cultural changes. This whole thing is a cultural attack. And there are elements of this where people are genuinely fighting for Canada, fighting for the culture that they believe that we still exist within. An example of that is the Manitoba Conservative Legislature pushing for the restoration of the statues. So there are people out there who are either don't understand yet what's going on, and they will soon. They will soon, because they're not stopping and they're accelerating this, right? There are people out there who don't get it and who are fighting. And those are separate things. Who don't get it, who do get it and are fighting, who don't get it and are fighting anyway too, right? Who don't understand what's going on, but they're fighting for the culture too. So there are people who are at all different phases. I think the biggest problem, I didn't think this was going to be a long show today, it's funny. I think the biggest problem is educating people that we're in a situation where our basic culture, our way of life is actually really under attack. Because if you say that to somebody and they don't know the rest of the story, they'll think you're crazy. They'll say, go to Walmart, man. I would say, yeah, go to Walmart, man. Check it out. It doesn't look the same, does it? It looks very different than it used to. That's enough out of me, but pay attention. Pay attention to what's happening with the world around you, right? The local world around you. Note the differences, because those differences add up. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.